Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, if you dutifully watched Joe Biden sputter through his announcement of the administration's $2 trillion infrastructure plan yesterday, you may have been left with some questions. First, and most obviously, is this really about infrastructure? Bridges, roads, airports, things we could actually use? Or is it yet another weird climate scheme slash power grab slash race-based redistribution plan? What exactly is this? And by the way, $2 trillion sounds like a lot for anything. Won't that kind of spending cause hyperinflation? If you print money like it's not worth anything, doesn't the value of that money decline? Normal people may have had questions like those, but thankfully the New York Times was on the scene to quell all doubt. The New York Times approached Joe Biden's plan with the enthusiasm of Izvestia, applauding yet another record Soviet potato harvest. Quote, Biden plan stresses jobs, roads, and growth, read one of the New York Times' 4 separate front-page headlines this morning. $2 trillion for once-in-a-generation fix of infrastructure, read another headline. That's real. Ron Klain, the tech lobbyist turned White House chief of staff, was so grateful for the backup from the Times that he tweeted out the front page this morning. America, let's go win the future, Klain wrote. Let's go win the future, America. What does that future look like? Well, let's be clear from the outset that this plan, whatever its merits, will not make your commute easier. Only about 5% of that $2 trillion will actually go to roads and bridges. So 5% on infrastructure, 95% on social engineering. That's what Joe Biden calls a once-in-a-lifetime infrastructure bill. And he's right about part of it. It is once in a lifetime. If this bill passes, the next generation will live in a very different country. Now, before we tell you what's in the bill, one word about who's going to pay for it. In fact, we only need one word, and the word is you. Taxes are going up dramatically, and they didn't have to, actually. Tax revenues no longer fund the ambitions of our political class. Have you noticed? The Federal Reserve funds them. When politicians want something, they just print the money. It's called modern monetary theory. They've been doing this for years, and it's accelerating. So there's no actual reason to raise taxes anymore for anything. But Joe Biden wants to raise taxes to punish you, and he plans to do that. The administration is calling for a tax increase of about $3 trillion over 10 years. That includes taxes on individual income and investments, as well as on corporations. This would make the first major tax hike in 28 years. But it's actually a much bigger tax hike than anything we saw under the Clinton administration. In 1993, taxes amounted to only about 0.5% of GDP. This plan would come to roughly 3 times that, about $300 billion a year. That's 1.3% of GDP. So you'd have to go all the way back to 1968 to find a bigger tax increase. It's a big deal. You have any questions? No questions allowed. Joe Biden doesn't want to answer questions, and he doesn't have to because it's an emergency. In emergencies, you do what you're told.
What I'm proposing is a one-time capital investment of roughly $2 trillion in America's future, spread largely over 8 years. Put simply, these are investments we have to make. We can afford to make them. Or put another, we can't afford not to.
All this can be yours, America, for just $2 trillion. We can't afford not to spend $2 trillion, says Joe Biden, like the used car salesman he is at heart. Biden knows he's not going to be paying a dime. People like Joe Biden avoid taxes. Joe Biden avoids taxes, in fact. In 2017 and 18, Joe Biden and his wife dodged payroll taxes on more than $13 million that they got through speaking fees and book royalties. How'd they do that? Did you do that? You probably didn't. They did. The Wall Street Journal reported that the Bidens, quote, classified the income as S-corporation profits rather than taxable wages. Are you surprised? Oh, come on. Corporations are going to pay for it. Yeah, if only. We'd support it if that were the case. But they're not. Corporate interests put Joe Biden in the White House. They design his policy. They sign off on every part of it, just as the credit card companies in Delaware once did.